This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 426 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products and TotalSaddleFit.com. Tonight we're talking to Denise O'Mara from the Equine Land Conservation Resource about partnering with the USDF to give out an award. Hillary Moore Hebert joins us for a discussion on younger horses, and we're going to cover a question on simple changes.
This is Reese Koffler-Stanfield from Georgetown, Kentucky.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show. With our producer, Glenn, here is joining us again. This must be like 2 weeks in a row, Glenn.
Wow.
It is. I miss you guys, so I have to, get you all in a 1 month. And I won't be back for another 6. So.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, we're
recording a little early this week because I've got to go to a horse show and I've got lots of clients to have to help. So
it has to work a little, everybody.
I'm going to have to work a little later on this week, but that's okay. Once in a while.
Yeah,
it's your
go
fine,
time.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Every once in a while, it's good. Well, we wish you guys luck. I hope it's not super hot. It's going to be hot again here. It's going to be like 106 tomorrow, so that's going to be pretty hot. So, yeah, that's going to be a hot one. So, yeah. But
I don't think we have to worry too much. It'll be fine. It's thunderstorms that I worry about, right? That's the only thing that's going to ruin my day. But there's not much you can do about that, so we're going to be okay.
You're going to be great. So, Phil, you did something really cool over the weekend. What'd you do?
Well, actually, on Saturday, I donated my time to give a clinic, some lessons at a charity event that was a fundraiser for breast cancer research. And I thought it was a really cool idea put on by a couple of people, partnered with a farm. And so what they did is they actually silent auctioned off these lessons with myself and a few other coaches in the area, with the proceeds being donated to this breast cancer research fund, which I thought was a really cool idea. They did a barbecue lunch and a silent auction for some other items that were donated to this cause, and everybody got together, wore pink, and really made a really fun, cool kind of day out of it. So I thought that was a really interesting fundraising idea, to host a full clinic with a number of riders and a number of clinicians. And they had a vet practice that came in, donated their time to do a little demonstration. Saddle fitting, they try to throw kind of everything, equine nutrition, try to bring everything together to help a great cause. So I was happy to do that, and I got to teach somebody new that I'd never met before, a horse rider combination. So that was kind of fun, and I met a bunch of different people, new people that who are involved in the sport but I'd never met before. And had a wonderful, great weather, wonderful day out of it. So
that's really cool. What a great day! I'm gonna keep that and maybe put that in our wheelhouse. That sounds great.
Yeah, I mean,
really cool.
If you got a great cause, I think people are more than happy to donate their time or whatever it is, and they were able to raise, I think, around $6,000 in one day.
Wow! Whoa!
So
holy smokes!
I think people were happy to bid on the lessons, which were more expensive than they would normally be. But, if you get it for a cause, I think that people are really excited about these kinds of things, and, different than a horse show or, going out for a fun event. And I don't know, I thought it was a great idea.
Or buying a knick-knack that you won't ever use or
a knick-knack or a service. People donated services for the, not just lessons, but all kinds of different things. Equine massage, like all kinds of these. Yeah. So, if anybody's interested in kind of organizing something like that, I can certainly get them in touch with the people who ran this great event and, different ideas. So it was awesome. So
I love it. Oh, that's fantastic. Very cool. Thanks for sharing, Phil. That was great.
No problem.
I love it. Well, Phil, we also have a great interview next, kind of in the same idea of spreading some kind of charity. Or we're going to speak with Denise O'Mara from the Equine Land Conservation Resource, and she's going to talk about their partnership with the United States Dressage Federation. Well, we are so happy to have Denise O'Mara. She is the Director of Education for the Equine Land Conservation Resource. How are you today, Denise?
I'm very well. How are you?
We are great. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, I really appreciate you having me on.
We're excited. So just tell us a little bit, start the whole story, because you are on the dressage program because you have partnered with the United States Dressage Federation.
Right. As an organization, and we are a national organization, we really seek to educate individuals, organizations, and even government agencies when they need it, about the need for and the value of protecting lands, trails, and facilities that are part of the equine activity experience throughout the nation. So we do partner with quite a few equine organizations, and they can be anything from, a local riding club to a larger, even state or national organization, regional organization, or land trusts, to try to help them to have the tools that they need to deal with issues that come up, and they could be development, it could be loss of access to trails, could be trying to gain access over private land, just a lot of different issues that can come up. And we have 6 issue areas which have to do with educating this vast group of people across the United States about land use planning and zoning, things that they need to know about the economic benefits of horses and the economic situation in their state, what it means to the local economy, the state economy. We look at liability issues, which are very important when you're dealing with private landowners. We looked at best management practices to look at what type of practices that are happening on a given piece of property and how that affects the watershed, the local community, and what horse people can do to kind of bump that up so that they're providing an additional service, and we call them ecosystem services. And then we also look at teaching about conservation easements, and that's a really powerful tool. There are a lot of different types of easements and programs that deal with purchasing or donating development rights to given pieces of property. So there's a kind of a broad spectrum of information that we delve into and dish out to our constituents.
Yeah, what's the relationship?
Well, USDF happens to be both a physical neighbor of ours. We're at the Kentucky Horse Park, and the group of horse organizations that are here do communicate with each other quite a bit, and they have a very good educational program that they run. And so it's kind of easy for us to talk with them face-to-face because we can just walk down the street and they're right there. But they also have a very well-organized constituency. All of their nationwide groups are quite well-organized, and they're easy to communicate with. So we asked them if they would be interested in kind of carrying on that educational component by focusing on individuals or organizations that have done or are working on land conservation issues, whether that be, facilities, show facilities, farms, ranches, anything that's like that, including trails. And some dressage people do use trails for exercise. We have a history of recognizing people in the nation, an awards program. It's called the Anson Taylor Award. It was named after one of our original founders for ELCR. And it recognizes people who have done pretty much amazing things in their community to preserve access to these equine lands, trails, and facilities. So we've been kind of expanding that over the last few years. We started a program with thoroughbred owners and breeders. Again, another neighbor of ours in the park, and we're we're trying to expand that year after year. We ask them to send out some information and actually an application form to people that are within their realm that have been working, the same as with the Anson Taylor Award, that have been working on equine land advocacy and activities. And so this is the first year that we're doing that with USDF. We think it's going to turn out to be great. We're going to award that at their annual meeting. So we've got until, I think, the beginning of October to have applications come in. And we're really looking forward to seeing what these different local chapters have been doing in this realm. I think that it's really important that no matter what end the equestrian community that you're in, whether it's in high-end showing or local individual riders that just ride trails, that you're really aware of everything that's going on in your community that could affect your access to land, zoning, how that affects how many horses you can keep, and all of these aspects. You don't have to be tremendously active in it until something happens, but you do need to be aware. You need to educate yourself. You need to be involved in the planning process in your community, because very often your access to land and the type of zoning that's happening can affect what happens to a given piece of property or a trail or a connection or a show facility or, an eventing facility. So every organization that's out there can really help themselves out a lot and help their community by becoming aware of the things that they can do to be proactive about saving horse lands.
Fantastic. So Denise, how do people, if they're more interested, how do we get more information and or an application for the USDF award?
We have posted on our website, and USDF has it on their website, the application link, and they can find out more about the award. The application is fairly lengthy, but not too bad. You do have to do a little bit of kind of short essay type writing, I guess. You need to put in a paragraph about certain things, to just talk about what you've been doing and what the results of it have been, or if you're in the middle of something, what caused it to start out with. So if you go to the USDF website, you should be able to find that link very quickly. You can also get it through our website. And if you have any questions about that, you can call the USDF number, which I don't have handy right at the moment, or you can call us at ELCR, and our number is 859-455-8383. There are lots of ways to get to that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. Well, Denise, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us what you're up to. It sounds like a fantastic award. And, being from Lexington, this is a big issue that we deal with a lot. And It's great to have such a great organization. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
This Nutrition Minute is brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products, the company that simplifies your search for research-proven nutritional supplements at kppusa.com.
The horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. Managing horses can be challenging. Each horse's personality affects the way he behaves and reacts to the world around him. Horses with certain dispositions can be at higher risk for developing health problems than others. High-strung or excitable horses are easily stressed, but so is the timid, quiet warrior. Stressed horses are more likely to develop digestive upsets that lead to colic, diarrhea, and ulcers. Nalox Advanced was specifically developed to support a digestive tract that is under stress. It sustains proper pH levels, reducing the incidence of ulcers and hindgut imbalances, while simultaneously supporting the healing of damaged tissues. Nalox Advanced supports the complete digestion of starches and sugars and sustains populations of beneficial bacteria. Make life a little easier on your sensitive horse and start him on Nalox Advanced today. To learn more about the ingredients in Nalox Advanced, visit Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com.
tonight we are so happy to have Hillary Moore Hebert, contributing editor for Dressage Today, on for her monthly segment. How are you, Hillary?
Hi, guys. I'm doing great. How are you?
I think we're all sweating is what's happening. It's very hot. So, Hillary, what are we talking about today?
So I wanted to go kind of in a direction because I had a couple of things happen over the course of the hot weather. Whenever it's this hot, I usually do things like buy young horses in my free time because I can sit on the internet side and I have a second to kind of look through things. And people are starting to get, heartbeats confirmed so you can get some horses in utero before anybody else snags them. But I just had a horse that I bought in utero that's Dante Weltino Diamond Hit that just hit the ground. And he's a colt. And it kind of caught me off guard because I just was expecting a mare. I don't know why. And I sort of imagined, okay, if it doesn't work out, you always have a broodmare prospect or whatever. And he's really nice. And it came up with all of these questions of, what do you do with a young horse? And as much as I want to believe, as a professional, I compete at the eye, that I have all of this knowledge of things with breeding and on and on and on, it really is something that I feel like I'm an amateur about. And I feel very nervous. I really appreciate the breeders helping me, and I have some friends who really walk me through some stuff. But there was an article up on the internet the other day talking about how one of our, more recognizable younger horses ended up selling in Europe for quite a large amount of money. And the article got a lot of people on social media talking about exactly how I feel right now, where there's this disconnect, and people kind of argue what I mean by that. So I'm nervous to use that word, but there's a disconnect, I feel, where I'm really good at looking at finished horses, knowing, if I see a horse that's going first level, second level, third level, I can kind of look at it and say, okay, that is the type of horse that I'm attracted to. I can see what's going on, but how do I train my eye to look at young horses, like, a horse that's 3 weeks old, 3 months old, and 3 years old? And how do I say, okay, if I had all the money in the world, what horse would I be picking? It starts to get to an interesting place. And then there's a lot of other questions too. If you buy a young horse like that, say you find Valegro and he's 3 weeks old and you buy him, what do you do with that horse? Because not a lot of boarding barns are kind of lining up to take in weanlings and have them hang out at their place. And it's a little bit, I think, more up in the air in our country about what to do with young horse training. And there's these questions about, are FEI trainers suitable as young horse trainers? Because in Europe, you have a lot of people who specialize in young horses. So it's a tricky thing. Like, if you're given all the things in the world with ending up breeding a horse that comes out and is phenomenal, what are those steps? And if you had all the money in the world, which not many people do, if you were to buy your dream youngster, what is it that you're looking for? And what are the resources that we have to help people learn that more? And I was really excited today to talk to you guys about that, because I think you guys know more than I do about it. And it was sort of, I wanted to just ask a lot of questions, because I think a lot of the listeners will also be curious about, what steps can you take if you decide that you want a young horse and you want to do right by them to develop them?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think a challenging question. And I think, Phil, you're going to be the best resource. So I can just throw my towel in. I did some breeding, and I bred 3 horses, and they're actually all lovely individuals. I was very happy with breeding, but I will tell you, from a breeding perspective, it is not for the faint of heart. It is hard to breed a horse. I had a really, really wonderful mare that I bred, and I was very lucky to have a Grand Prix horse that I was able to breed, and I did embryo transfer for one of them. And I will tell you, after 3 babies, I decided very quickly that I wanted to just buy a horse when I could see it and knew what I was buying. and more of an older horse. But that was from my perspective. And I personally, I mean, I own a farm and it wasn't a big deal to have them. And I had young horses growing up. My mom did hunter babies. So I had some experience with it. I will tell you, for me, you have to really love the young horse process and the baby process. And I wasn't really for me. So, and then from a financial standpoint, God love breeders because it is very hard. I mean, there's a lot of coins side to this coin in the sense of, breeders breed them and then they feel like they're worth X amount of money, but riders and trainers feel like those horses need to have a certain amount of miles, if that makes sense, or culture. And that takes money for the breeders to make that happen if they aren't able to do it. So it's a little bit, I think it's hard. And it's very hard to find a young horse and to make it to be a nice individual. And I learned that. I mean, I ended up having to have some ground people come in and work on manners. And then I don't really like starting the youngsters. So I would, so it got expensive even for myself because that's not also sort of the area I specialize in. So I would say it was very hard. I think we did actually a pretty good job getting it done, but it wasn't for me. So Phil, that's a very kind of a pessimistic view, but that was sort of for my thing with breeding. It was sort of, I did it and I thought, okay, I did a good job, but I didn't enjoy the process. And I think on some level you really have to enjoy, going to your first show and doing some groundwork. And for me, I want to ride, so that wasn't my thing. But Phil, this is definitely a lot more your area.
In terms of what you're talking about, it's the thing that really strikes a chord with me because, I've had a lot of people where they've lost their mare. And the first thing that comes to mind when you're talking about that is you are putting in a lot of risk with your mare. Yeah. If you're not doing embryo transfer, that if you end up with a situation where even like say as a maiden mare, she loses the foal, then you lose the foal prospect or the prospect of a foal, and then you lose your mare. And that is awful. And I think there's a lot of risk as a breeder that then for me, there's some guilt that I kind of swoop in, buy a horse in utero. And I'm like, well, if it doesn't work, like there goes my little deposit. But meanwhile, you're like, in the barn losing your mare or, it just is a lot more risk, I think. So I totally agree with you. It seems like there's a lot even going into it in the first, couple of months.
Well, and I think, for me, it was a great experience and I'm really glad, but I ended up with a gelding that I still have that we love him, but he struggles, Pat, with collection because he's such a big guy. He got injured as a young horse. So, I still own him and he's a very beautiful pasture pet. And then I had two smaller mares and very, very well bred. If I wanted to continue my breeding program, I would have kept them. But for riding horses, they were both, one was, I think 16-1 when she finished and the other one's like 15-3. And I'm 5'9", almost 5'10". So like, that's just not the size that I wanted. So, from that perspective, it was just easier for me to now go and we can certainly bring this discussion there, but to go to Europe and find a young horse, you're still going to have to pay the import fee. But I always feel you need to buy the oldest age you can afford. So, Phil, what do you weigh in? You've been awful quiet, but this is really your thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have done a little breeding with a mare or two of my own. When I went to Europe, I went to a farm that also did breeding, and also my boss there, Johan Rocks, who was a Dutch team trainer, he actually purchased. It's a guy that comes from not a lot of money, so he has built up horses that he had purchased as weanlings, yearlings, 2-year-olds, a lot of young horses we dealt with. And so I would always kind of pick his brain about breeding, about buying young horses and stuff like that. And now I'm back working for a person that has 2 brood mares who do a little bit of breeding there. So, I mean, I have a ton of experience with young horses, a ton of experience with people who like to buy young horses. I mean, it's really, I've really tried to educate myself because, I mean, if you're going to buy a made horse, it costs a lot of money. I mean, and that's just not somewhere I come from. But So, purchasing in utero, it sounds like a really good option, a great idea. You're not putting out a ton of money. And then again, you're kind of like, well, am I going to get a mare? Am I going to get a gelding? Am I going to get a really nice horse? Am I going to, you have to kind of decide what your expectation is and whether that matches up, because I think a lot of people buy in utero, and you can breed the best bloodlines ever in the entire world and still not get a very nice horse. That's just something that happens. So it's very risky. And anytime you buy a horse that isn't finished and made and done where you want it to be, it's a risk. And so it's not always the best thing to be doing. As far as like looking at young horses, I think I've talked to Reese about this before, and looking at foals. And for me, if I'm going to buy a foal, I have to really, well, any horse, you have to kind of like the character first, or at least research the bloodlines enough to know that the horses will have or should have a pretty good temperament. Now, they say that temperament comes mostly from the mare. That's just, something that the breeders say. I think that can be true to a certain extent, but...
Just to finish that thought, we have two half-brother sisters that have the same mare and different stallions, and they are completely not alike. You wouldn't even be able to tell that they're related. I mean, just temperament, build. So, there's no way to guarantee anything when you're breeding two horses, I guess is the point. You try and do the best job that you do. And usually, the breeders in Europe have generations of mares that they've bred themselves and really know themselves. And that, that's how they get their best combination. A lot of people in North America just kind of, just as a generalization, just have a mare. They only know one generation. They haven't crossed it a whole lot with different horses. So it's just, I think it comes down to a culture of breeding and just a ton of knowledge that produces the best horses.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Phil, okay, so once you kind of get this horse, you have now, in Hillary's case, she got a colt, not a filly. I mean, what is your advice?
Step one,
to do next. I mean,
the big
step
question
one.
I have too, as part of that, and I'm not saying this in my case necessarily, but this is the big question with a colt is, what do you do with a colt to know whether or not it should be gelded?
It should 100%
be
gelded.
I have very good advice from Suzanne Hassler at Hassler Dressage when I had a very, a nice looking colt. I thought, let me think about keeping this a stallion. And she said the best thing to me. She said, first of all, think about the life that stallion's going to have. It's a very, very difficult life that the stallions have. They have to have different turnout. They have to have, they have to be handled differently. Number one, you need to be capable and willing to do that. And number two, realize that it takes so much for that horse to really, really make it as a stallion. And then it's still very difficult to make it lucrative. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to geld my horse. So I would just say that, yes, you can have the dream of having a stallion, but what are your ultimate goals? Do you want a breeding farm? Do you want a breeding stallion? Or are you trying to go for a riding horse? If you're going for a riding horse, I think gelding it is step one for me. I mean, that's what I did for myself. And that was a good thing.
Yeah, I think, a nice stallion makes an exceptional gelding. I think if you want to be in the breeding game, the stallion should be in Europe, because there you get to cover tons of mares. You might, financially, there's not a lot of money in breeding. So
no.
I just think, and like we said, I mean, I rode a stallion. It was a Frisian, since he was 3 years old. And it's not very nice for the horse, because they are social animals, only we can't let them be social. They can't run around in a herd of mares what they want to do. And then for boarding and for just handling the horse, you always had to kind of think about it. And, at a horse show, there's just so many things that goes into dealing with the stallion that I think it's just much nicer for them to be a gelding,
Yeah.
That's,
I agree with that.
100% my opinion.
Well, it seems like, too, as you guys are talking about that, again, because I come more from the perspective of just like the riding side, the schedule that we have developed in our country with Florida, and then people can now go to Tryon to kind of go midway, and then you can go to do stuff all through the summer, and then you can decide between doing championships and finals and Devons in the fall, and then you can go right back to Florida. I can't imagine how you could really be doing, and then people are going to Europe for the summer, how you could be fitting in anything. I think about some people I know who have shown stallions for breeders, and always what they were talking about is, right when we're getting to peak for competition, the horse has to go and breed. And it just was exhausting to them, and it threw them off their schedule. It just seems like it would be a lot to kind of overlap. And how do you juggle all those things? The same way, having my child, you have to kind of do something that's tangential to what your competition is. And so it makes sense to me that it would just make it so it would be just a very difficult thing to do.
Yes, I think so too. I think it really
a lot of problems and logistics around if if the horse, if it's not just a stallion, it's actually a breeding stallion. It's from a trainer's point of view, is very, very difficult. You really have to have a really good purpose for doing that, I think, and I'm not sure a lot of people do. So. The big breeding farms, they do it really well, and they manage it, and I think that's the way it should be done.
Well, and so I think that brings up the next question is sort of what do you think a little one should be doing? I mean, I worked with my little ones, so they weren't complete outside beasts. Like, they knew how to wear halters, they knew how to walk, and I had they did a little bit of groundwork. Because one was just really difficult to handle. She needed something to do. And that was after we weaned her. So, I mean, my guys knew how to get on the trailer, and, as yearlings and 2-year-olds, I think that was really important. I like I said, I didn't enjoy myself working with them. So I brought in somebody that did a really good job with them. I didn't have the patience. I was like, I'm not teaching this thing how to get on the trailer. But they did a really good job at that. And I thought that was really incredibly important. I think a lot of times breeders, sometimes, they bring in a 3 or 4-year-old that literally doesn't know how to wear a halter. And I think that makes that horse's road
older.
Yeah, so much harder for that horse.
Yeah, I know some people where they kind of think the horses shouldn't be working until crazy late. And then it's just, I find that surprising because you have a full-grown horse that's barely been handled, and it's like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Right. I don't enjoy that myself. So what were you thinking?
Well, I've seen it on both ends. I've seen people who have the time to kind of manage the young horses and turn them in and out every day and deal with them. And I've also dealt with a few 2-year-old, 3-year-olds that have been, literally out in the paddock and running with the herd. And it's a difficult transition for the horse, but they get over it. And within 2 or 3 months, they're into work and into being handled and into being, into a different schedule and a different life. It just is you have to be really confident. It's just a difficult transition at that time. Obviously the ones who are already handled, it's easier for them, I think. But, it takes a lot of time to be able to do that, because you have to be really consistent with it and do it, consistently, kind of every day and dealing with young horses. That's not always a lot of fun. I know in Europe they have these big breeding farms and the horses are just out in the field. And again, it comes down to character, with a horse with a good character, they can, they'll work with you and you can deal with them and it turns out it's okay. And you can, kind of do the whole process of bringing them into a stall and backing them all at the same time. But again, it just, with all of this stuff, it just takes a lot of experience, and you have to kind of lean on professionals and people who know how to do it. The idea of, just getting a really young horse, for the first time and just playing with it for 2 or 3 years. And then I'm just going to lunge it. And then to me, I've seen way too many disasters in this situation than things going really well.
We have run out of time for tonight, but Hillary, how can our listeners find you online if they have any more questions for you?
They can check out dressagetoday.com, and then you can also check us out on Facebook. And always, if anyone has interesting topics or questions, they can always find me on Facebook at Hillary Moore Hebert and just send me a private message. Just if there's any topics in general they had questions about. That's something new I kind of want to encourage people to do so that we can think about things that some of the listeners might be interested in.
This week's dressage training tip is brought to you by Total Saddle Fit, home of the shoulder relief girth at TotalSaddleFit.com.
Well, Phil, for our Total Saddle Fit tip of the week, we got or have a Facebook shout out and or email that we got. So read it to us. What are we talking about today?
We got a question from Claire that we're going to try and cover about how to develop quality canter walk transitions. She says, my horse and I seem to have a lot of trouble staying relaxed and balanced in the down transition. I try to not use my reins, but she tends to dive on the forehand and brace against the bridle, and I feel helpless and confused on how to fix that without using my reins. When it feels like she's already running onto them, we occasionally get a nice one when she is super collected, balanced, and I ask at the exact right moment, but they are few and far between. How can we help her?
Okay. Phil, do you want to take this one first?
Why do I got to take the tough ones first? All right. Well,
she actually, she kind of answered her own question. Yeah, in some ways.
Insight into the problem right away in the question. Like a downwards transition in the canter comes from being really balanced, rhythmical, and having everything set up almost perfectly before you ever even ask. I think the second thing is that she's trying to do it without using your reins, but I think to train this movement, this downward transition, to get it right, I think to help the horse, you have to actually use the reins to help it happen. And then, as you develop it better and the balance better, then you can start to use less and less rein aids. I think that kind of applies to a lot of things. The end goal is there, but you have to do something to be able to get there. So if your horse is plowing through the reins a little bit and you want to make this downwards transition, you've got to use your reins. But sometimes it's just maybe using your reins better. I think in the canter to walk transition, especially, timing is such a huge component of how it all comes together. And I try and tell my riders to think about each canter stride being in two phases. There's the kind of the collection phase of the canter stride. That's the first part. And then the forward phase. And what I see a lot of riders do is actually grabbing the horse in the forward phase and releasing in the collecting phase instead of the other way around. I think I myself had some trouble with this, a while ago, but it's the timing in the canter is just such a huge thing. What do you think about that? In the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on, and I think she's getting kind of understands what's happening, which is also great. Canter walks are also significant strength situation. Horses have to be strong enough to be able to hold that collected canter. So again, transitions within the gait will also help. Canter, very collected canter, canter out, very collected canter, where you're getting the horses to sit and be a little bit more active behind. That for sure is also important. But like you said, there is some level of you have to ride a half halt from your hands and the reins, but you also have to make sure that your seat is pretty active. That's a pretty active seat you have to have before you ride the transition to walk. And then my other thing is placement. That was the only thing I was going to add to that, Phil, was when I start to teach canter walks, a lot of times, the horse theoretically should know how to do a 10-meter circle or a smaller circle. What I like to do is do that circle, and then after the transition, when I'm coming toward the wall, now that's obviously, I'm lucky enough that I have an indoor where there's walls. But even if you are outside, some sort of barrier will help because the horse is already thinking, I've got to come back a little bit. A wall really helps because they will come back because there's a wall. So I
Because they
like to
kind of
ride
have
sort
to.
of, yeah, they have to, right? A 10-meter circle. And as I make my circle and I'm approaching the wall at the end, that's where I try to teach them the canter walk transitions. Because by nature, it's going to back them off. It's hard to do it sort of if you're doing a canter walk and let's say you're on going to the open side of the arena. That's a tough spot to ask for the canter walk. And I even think second level test 1, they have you go, it's actually a pretty hard line because they're testing to see, can your horse do the canter walk? But they have you come across the short diagonal, I'm almost positive here, and do the transition to walk over the center line. Of course, the horse is going to come on the diagonal and think forward or have a tendency to come on their forehand. So that's a really hard place to put that walk transition. But that would be where I wouldn't teach it in the beginning. I wouldn't teach the second level 1 movement in the beginning because of how the horse is thinking. So that's the only other thing I would add to that is make sure as you're doing your canter walks that you have a good placement. Or let's say you're coming through the circle, so almost a figure 8 on one of the ends of the circle. So again, that will bring the horse back. It's another good exercise. So you can get creative with how you do your circles, but just have them be completed for the walk transition toward the arena wall. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So,
I mean, again, another way to sort of evaluate your downwards transition is in the upwards transition. So I see a lot of people ride walk to canter, and the canter being a little bit too much forward and not organized enough. So when you do your walk to canter, think of cantering right away, collected, and then coming back to walk as soon as you can. So only doing maybe, try to shorten it up as much as you can. If you start with 5 strides, try and get down to, cantering 3 strides and then walking again. So the horse doesn't get a chance to really run forward or cover too much ground. Just doing, quick kind of canter walk, canter walk, canter walk. So they're thinking already about walk before they get going too much. So I think, that will, again, it's balance, developing strength. I think this is a really tough problem. It's a big jump from doing first level where the you do a simple change through trot, which is, fairly okay and pretty, I think a lot of horses can kind of manage their way through that, to doing, simple changes through the walk. And now this is like serious, balance and serious carrying power that the horse needs. I think you can see a lot of horses just fall down onto the forehand. That can happen for a number of reasons. That's really a tough one to fix without being able to kind of see the horse a little bit. And normally when I'm doing a clinic or I'm helping a horse that I haven't seen before, I have to try 3 or 4 different things to try and figure out what exactly is going on. So that's what I'm talking about. The upward transition, kind of look at that, see if the horse can lift the wither and lift the pole in the upward transition. If they just are walking and then plow through into the canter, then I would deal with that problem first, and then work on the downwards a little bit while trying to keep the pole up. But if you're trying to throw away the reins a little bit too early, then of course the horse is just going to fall down. The contact and the reins and the hands have a little bit of a job of helping the horse to balance, because without enough rein pressure, then the neck will naturally just drop down and fall towards the ground. There needs to be something that helps keep them up or teach them that they are supposed to go up before they learn to just go up on their own, and learn to that the muscles are developed to carry on their own a little bit. So a little bit the job of the contact is to help the horse develop the muscles, so then they can do it on their own. So it's part of the development phase of all of this. So I think you got the idea without using a ton of pressure or be pulling on the reins, but also there's a responsibility of the rider to help that develop better through a little bit of pressure or a little bit of timing and balance. That's the way I would try and put it, is just timing and assistance in the balance, so that you give at the right time and you take at the right time. All of this it can be pretty complicated, but I think with these ideas you'll get going a little bit in a better way. I think this takes about a year from the inception of the idea of a simple change to actually being able to perform a pretty decent simple change for 6 or a 7 in a test. So,
and some horses
it's,
are
like everything's
get it,
plugging away.
like nail it. Yeah, they're like, oh, okay, this is no problem, and then others really struggle with it. So, so give it some time too.
The horses with a better canter just naturally do it better. I know that the thoroughbreds get these simple changes pretty easily. They actually can be a little bit short and nervous about it. That's a little bit on another problem and spectrum of training, but and then so even the warm bloods can be a little kind of dull and heavy on the front end to be able to get this right away really well. So I think everyone struggles with this. This is a big a big change in the horse's balance in life. Yeah. Second level is huge. So hopefully it helps. If you have more questions or we need to explain something better, that you can send us another message, or we can try and help in a different way, or say something in a different way, and we'll figure it out together.
Love it.
How's that sound?
That sounds great. Well, everybody, as you know, you can find our show notes and links to today's guest on our website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter @Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
I think the best way to find me is through Facebook, or my email is philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors for allowing us to put on a good show. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we'll talk to you next week.